And welcome to Pop Screen, part of the Geek Show podcast network, where that corner of the Geek Show that likes to deal with the good, the bad, and the frankly plasticky of movies either starring, about, or by pop stars. No, the podcast covers such a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from documentaries to science fiction, from country and western to hip-hop. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker and I write for The Geek Show and Horrified.com, the British horror website. This week, I've been joined by...
Hello, I'm Jeff Pizek. I am also known as Scrambled Face over on Letterboxd. You can follow me there and see all my overlong reviews of old horror and kung fu and sci-fi and trash, and occasionally a great mainstream film like this one.
Yes. Yeah, this week's film is a love story, and like all love stories, it starts with a simple question being asked. That question being, Graham, do you want to do From Justin to Kelly on Pop Screen? Frankly, I know I shouldn't give up hope, but I never thought I'd hear it asked. I had been wanting to do this bizarre artifact of the early 2000s since we started. I also knew it was the sort of thing that I could probably never pitch at any of my co-hosts until you came out of the blue with it.
Sure. Yeah, personally, this is not my usual fare, as I just hinted. Not even my musical taste, really. I tend to lean more toward non-mainstream stuff, and but for some reason, when this movie came out and ever since, I've been kind of fascinated with just with its existence, and which for reasons we'll get into. But yeah, I figured for Pop Screen, I thought this might be a pretty ripe subject.
Absolutely, yeah. You mentioned the idea of mainstream music. I'm going through a phase where I'm kind of falling back in love with a lot of mainstream pop again at the moment, as I've mentioned on many a Pop Screen episode. But when this came out, I would have classified my musical taste as fairly left of mainstream myself, and yet there are things in this that you see, and I'm not talking about the music. Lord God, am I ever not talking about the music? But there are things in this that I would have judged to be apocalyptically lame if I'd have seen this when it came out. And now it's like a beautiful time machine taking me back to a more innocent age where there was a war, but it was in the Middle East, so it was a bit further away, and that's about as innocent as you're going to get this century. And yeah, as soon as they started skating on a half pipe, I just thought this could not be more turn of the millennium.
Absolutely, yeah, and like you said, when it came out, it definitely had a different implication, I guess, maybe. And now, this was I watched it last night for the first time in a few years, and it really strikes me as something from its era.
Yeah.
It does not feel contemporary any longer, at least not to me. But yeah, when this came out, it was, is this the future of pop music and film and their neat little tango?
Yes, because we should explain for any listeners who are unfamiliar with From Justin to Kelly that the concept of it was it the first season? Yes, the first season of American Idol. The winner was Kelly Clarkson. The runner-up was Justin Guarini. And when they won, they put a movie into production as swiftly as possible, starving the two of them. And you're right, this did seem like one other arm of the talent show octopus at that time. You know, this stuff was already dominating the charts, and there was a certain fear of, is it going to dominate the cinemas as well?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, this was 2003, so it was, yeah, it was right after the first season of American Idol. Which I want to say, from what I was not watching it. I've seen way more of this movie than I have ever seen American Idol. But I want to say that Pop Idol in the UK was only a year or two maybe before it started spreading out. I think Poland, I read, was the first place, and then the US was pretty soon at picking up the format.
That sounds about right. Yeah, I think my memory of it was that Pop Idol started pretty soon after the turn of the millennium, 2001 or 2002. And
Yeah.
it quickly, I don't know whether it was like, I know it was a very big thing over there, but I don't know whether it was as much of a sort of weird clockwork thing where you knew that every single year the Christmas #1 single would always be whoever had won that season of Pop Idol. It was guaranteed for a while.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was just starting around that time, and the way that it started to leak into the pop culture. You know, some of the winners and folks who were close to winning started having their own solo careers and branching out. We're seeing them in commercials, and Ruben Studdard was in Scooby-Doo, I want to say. You know, he was the season 2 winner. So yeah, it was really just starting to get its fingers out there.
And was it also the case? I mean, Clarkson still has a career now. Clarkson has a talk show. Guarini, I was Googling around for YouTube videos of Justin Guarini, and one of the top hits was an interview with Oprah Winfrey, which was filed literally as "Where are they now?" You know, not running from the cliche, but yeah, that's it. Was it also the case with American Idol that the winners tended to have a fairly short shelf life, but the runners-up tended to last for so long that everyone forgot they were involved in this show?
There's a lot of that. I was looking over the list of winners again, just because, you know, I never really followed it, and I would hear about, you know, folks, you know, years later after they were huge superstars. I want to say Carrie Underwood
Oh, really?
was a winner, and she definitely has an ongoing career. But you're right. Yeah. I would say Jennifer Hudson is a good example of someone who, you know, didn't win. Chris Daughtry, you know, for better or worse, you know, also had a successful career and did not win. And there are a few other folks like that too.
Yeah. It's funny that you should mention Jennifer Hudson. Yeah, like I say, I had forgotten she was involved in this at all, but her Dreamgirls co-star, Anika Noni Rose, has a fairly thankless supporting role in this movie.
Oh yeah. If you want to get into her, yeah, she was. I want to say she was also Princess Tiana in the Princess and the Frog movie.
Yes.
Yeah. So she's done a lot, but yeah, her character here. Yeah, I spent a good portion of the movie, again, having seen it before several times, wondering, you know, what is her character? What is the uniqueness of her character? And there's a scene where the three of them, so she plays one of Kelly's friends, they go to spring break together, where the three of them are talking and they identify Kelly as the nice one, which of course, and you know, her other friend Alexa, the blonde boy crazy rich girl, she's called the party girl, which she kind of chafes against. But they refer to Kaya, I think her name is, as the smart one. And at no point is that ever expanded upon. Not that, you know, she doesn't seem intelligent, but it's as a character trait, I think it was something that was only on the page. You know?
Yeah, both of the leads have this friend group where they're friends with two people. And I think that the whole idea is that one of them is meant to make them look like less promiscuous by comparison. One of them is there to allay your fears that these nice, wholesome, clean-cut kids are going down to spring break to get laid. And the other one, I don't know, Justin's other friend has like a couple of very clear personality tics, but as you say, Anika Noni Rose's character is there because there has to be a subplot.
Right, yeah, and yeah, that subplot is, I remember feeling that her subplot, so she eventually pairs up with a waiter.
Yeah.
And she has this romantic thing with a waiter who's a local. You know, I always felt that it seemed like a very for lack of a better term, sort of a token representation. She had one black friend who gets paired off with the Latino waiter who takes her to, and their scenes are they're so set apart from the rest of the narrative. He takes her to a specifically like the one specifically non-white space we see in the film. He takes her dancing to a club where they have half of a dance number that they just fade away from. They don't even get to finish their whole song, but you know, it's there. It's part of it. You know, I feel like that's one of the real time capsule kind of pieces in there, because a movie now, you know, the representation I feel would not only be better and more integrated, but it wouldn't be so you know, you're doing this over here and everyone else is having the real story over here or something like that. It always felt kind of tacked on to me.
No, completely. It reminded me of just a few years after this, there was a very famous story about the production of Hitch. You remember Hitch, the Will Smith rom-com, where apparently when Smith signed up to do that script, they like went through hoops trying to work out how to cast his love interest, because they still had an attitude that you can't have a black man and a white woman in a rom-com, but you also can't have a black man and a black woman because that marks it out as a film that's just for black audiences. So they cast Eva Mendes, and I mean, that thankfully feels very different to how these decisions would be made now. But I was reminded of it when, as you say, the only two people of color in this film's version of Miami,
Right. Yeah.
just happened to pair off with each other.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's something I noticed the first time I watched it, and yeah, it felt more offensive to me back then. Again, because you know,
because
now I can look back at it.
Current attitude, yeah.
Yes. That again, I think that's a lot of the way I'm looking at this movie now.
It's easier to feel affection for it now. It is kind of a dinosaur.
Yeah, I was not as harsh on it as I've been in the past.
I mean, speaking of things that are practically fossilized, I knew that this came from American Idol, but I was still kind of surprised when I saw Simon Fuller's name in the opening credits, because that is a name I have not had to conjure with since we did the Spice World episode over a year ago. Spice World was also produced by Fuller, who at the time was the Spice Girls manager. And like this film, it was written by his brother, Kim Fuller, who, I mean, you know, I don't always object to nepotism. Who's going to complain about Jeff Bridges turning up in stuff just because he's Lloyd Bridges' son? But call me judgmental if you want, but I do not think that Kim Fuller would have much of a screenwriting career without his brother in tow.
No, you know, I didn't. Do you know what else he's worked on? Is there anything other than his own brother's productions?
Well, that was the thing that fascinated me when I was researching the Spice World episode, because he also, and this is so incongruous, he also wrote an episode of season 7 of Red Dwarf, which you know, I can't
maybe
say
he knew
anything.
somebody there too.
Yeah, if memory serves, I haven't gone back to Red Dwarf since I was a kid, because I think it's, it's a show you watch at a certain age, perhaps. But I remember his episode as being not that bad. But maybe I was just going slightly mad because it was season 7 and I wanted something to cling on to. But yeah, when I saw that there is a shared link between From Justin to Kelly and Red Dwarf, my head was just in orbit. I could not cope with it.
That is a weird connection. Yeah, I didn't look into the screenwriter as much. I did look into the director, who I assumed was a choreographer, and I think that's correct.
Okay, yeah.
But he also directed She's All That.
Oh, that's
I think would be his notable. Yeah.
Kirsten Dunst, is it?
It is. I'll tell you in a second.
I think the problem with this is not that those Turn of the Millennium teen comedies were bad. A lot of them were very good, but they all had the most generic titles you can imagine. I mean, She's All That, bloody hell.
That's it. Yeah, it's I know it's well regarded, again, like when all of this was going on, I was a working adult already, so it always seemed like something for kids to me.
Yeah.
But that,
yeah. I also noticed that he did the version of Cinderella with Brandy and Whitney Houston, which
okay.
it is very well remembered by people who watched that growing up.
Absolutely.
So he's not.
That's interesting.
He's not as green as you would think looking at this, really, is he?
Yeah, I think it's a assignment more than I just looking at his filmography. I think he did a lot of TV work, not necessarily a passion project for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was Rachel Lee Cook was in She's All That with Freddie Prinze Jr.
That's it. I was trying to. What is the thing that everyone remembers She's All That for? And I think I was confusing it with Get Over It, which definitely is a young Kirsten Dunst.
Yes.
She's All That, I remember it now. It's the one that has the worst ever instance of that old Hollywood cliche where a woman renders herself immediately beautiful just by taking her glasses off.
Yep. Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, it's my notes say it's a Pygmalion riff, so yeah, that makes sense.
It or sort of a very short version of Pygmalion, I'm thinking.
Right. Or like, probably more apropos Grease.
Yes.
Just a simple costume change. But there are definitely some Greaseisms in this one as well.
Yeah, we've gone into its depiction of race slightly more than the film itself has, I think. But when you first see Kelly's friend group, she's introduced singing to a basically empty bar. The song is a cover, I think. It's a country and western song by
I want to say it's a Reba McEntire.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And like you say, this is not my musical taste, and it's not something certainly not something I was into at the time. But her voice is good, from that generation of pop stars. She's got a bit more grit into it, a bit more snarl in it. So I appreciate that. But like I say, the bar is basically empty apart from one cowboy guy who seems to be like the guy who asks her out every single week. And then we meet her friends, and I think one of the things that is less pleasantly dated about this is the treatment of Alexa, her other friend, which is like, to call it slut shamey is like, on the one hand, it's too strong because this is not the kind of film which is like even adult enough to go to slutty territory. but also shame feels a bit weak for how the film makes every single appearance of it just revolve around her dating over and over again, and you just think, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she's constantly interfering in the main love story. Her whole purpose in it seems to be just to create, tension and subterfuge to keep these two from getting together. Interestingly, I listened to I didn't listen to the commentary. I have the DVD and have yet to pull the commentary track out, but one day. But I did watch some of the bonus stuff, which I'd never looked at before. And the director talks about the scene where Alexa has her own musical number. She gets kind of a showpiece where she's in a bar and she's singing to a group of men and kind of explaining her worldview in a way. And he said that they put that in there because he felt that the audience would be turning against her and really wanted to give her a moment to stop and explain herself.
Yeah.
So that was their attempt to try to leaven that a little bit, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting, yeah. Because the musical numbers in this, I thought they were very odd. I've been thinking a lot about musical numbers recently in general, partly because we've just done a few of them on Pop Screen, but also because it feels like after the musical stopped being a guaranteed Hollywood mainstay in the 1960s, audiences sort of lost the ability to just accept characters who start singing just because that's what kind of film it is. And every mainstream film that tries to bring the musical back has to deal with that in a certain way. And this one never finds a tactic. There is never a consistent approach to the musical numbers. There was one very odd moment where I could swear a song was playing on the soundtrack, and it gets to about half of the first verse playing on the soundtrack until Kelly Clarkson just suddenly starts singing it. And I thought that was the weirdest thing. It's just uncanny, I thought. How can she hear the soundtrack? It's like breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, it goes from non-diegetic to diegetic, and yeah, I think I know the moment you're talking about. Is it where they're looking for each other in the crowd, and
Yes.
the song's playing, and and then suddenly she starts singing. Yeah, I had the same thought.
I found it very hard to really pick the different numbers apart in the way that I like to do for musicals on this show, because I can't tell any of the songs apart.
Yeah, they're pretty samey.
Yes.
Again, it isn't my chosen genre. It isn't my favorite style. So yeah, it does feel all the same. And there are slower numbers, both just depending on which version you watch. Both Justin and Kelly get their own broody, slow Walk on the Beach song. The Justin one, I guess, was cut out for the theatrical version, but I've only ever seen the extended version.
That's show business, folks. I think I must have seen the theatrical version. I rented this, and my rental copy was about an hour 20.
Yes, yeah, the 90 minutes for the extended.
I was not aware there was like a Ridley Scott extended. Is it 2.5 hours? Is it like Kingdom of Heaven, where all of the subplots in it just make sense now?
No, it's 90 minutes total, and it's 2 extra songs. There's they both say extended version. So there's a song called Brighter Star, which is sort of the movie's Summer Lovin' set piece, where after Justin and Kelly go on they date, they're with their respective friend groups and they're singing to them about what happened, and it turns in that one actually does turn into a full-blown musical number where they're dancing through different environments and things. And I was kind of surprised to learn, because I never remember which version is which, but I surprised to learn that was cut out, because it's I'm not gonna say it's a great song, but it definitely helps move the story along. It's pretty entertaining as a set piece.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that there was a Justin Guarini solo song that was cut, because presumably, I mean, why does this film exist other than to show off these two singers, right?
Right. No, yeah. Maybe it's just for pacing, because when it happens is right after the big jet ski incident, the jet ski race, he roars up on the beach and kind of skids it to a stop and gets off, takes his helmet off, and then just starts singing his broody song of the soul. So yeah, it does kind of slow down the movie for sure. So that's got to be why.
There is, I can't remember if it's on. There's a lot of aquatic transportation in this film, so I can't remember quite which one is which. But there's one where he is on a speedboat or a jet ski or something, and he starts singing straight after his dialogue, like he's talking and literally his next sentence is sung. And
Yes.
I really thought he was doing it to take the piss. I thought he was joking until, the orchestra comes up in the background.
Yeah, I know exactly the point you're talking about. It's like you were saying earlier, that transition of a character from, telling a story, being in a narrative film, and suddenly they're singing, and that's how the story is being. Yeah, it is a really weird moment.
Yes. And I suppose we've been talking about how odd it is that Justin Guarani's solo song isn't in, but to be honest, I don't know what stage his career was at by the time this came out. I don't know if it had already started to go on the slide or whether maybe it always was. I mean, he was the runner-up, but it is kind of obvious why Kelly Clarkson beat him, really. I hate to say it. It does feel like kicking him when
Yeah,
he's down, but it really is.
yeah, the final number, um, it's like that kind of anemic cover of That's the Way I Like It.
Yes.
It really underlines the disparity in their personality and talent. Like, she's just kind of singing the song, going for it, and he's really working it, and he's got these facial expressions that he looks very angry at something off screen all the time, and yeah, it just seems like he's working a lot harder, and she feels kind of effortless. Obviously she's playing a character; it's a constructed persona for her, but I think she slips into it pretty well, despite how much she didn't want to be in this or be a part of it. She famously says she like pretty much cried through the production of it because she really didn't want to be in it, but was required to when she won.
Yes, yeah, that's a very strange clause. I guess it's part of the different relationship that Britain and America have with, I guess, cinema as a whole, really. It's never been, not since the 50s, it hasn't really been enough of a production line to make the idea of a pop idol film seem non-incongruous. There have been efforts to do this with reality show stars, but as with the runners-up, the best people, the people who've gone the furthest, are the ones who lose a contest and then bury it and go off and establish themselves properly. Like, I don't know, I don't think this is well known in America. This could blow your mind, but after Pop Idol took off, they applied that format to everything over here. There were contests for every corner of life, and one of them, there was quite a successful series on the BBC of contests to find stars for big West End musicals. One of them was called I'll Do Anything. It was supposed to find someone to play the role of Nancy in a new production of Lionel Bart's Oliver. I forget who won it, but I'll tell you who didn't win it, who competed in it, and I now can't believe it's the same person. Jessie Buckley.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I knew nothing about her singing at all. So she I know her as an actress
Yeah, yeah, and
only, but yeah.
you know her for the reasons I'm sure that everyone else knows her now for Chernobyl, and I'm thinking of Ending Things and all of the
Mhm.
extraordinary work that she's been doing since. But yeah, started off as a runner-up on a BBC talent show.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder who will come out of the woodwork years from now who are barely remembered. You know, they're still doing American Idol over here. They stopped it for a couple of years and ABC picked it up. And again, I'm so far removed from it. I haven't heard of any of the winners or any of that. But you know, you never know. Like the whole point of these talent competitions is to you know, pull these folks out of obscurity. And even if you know they're not the top winner, just getting their name out there, I think for a lot of them, like a lot of reality stars, I think is just that's the end game, is to, you know, get your face out there, get your talents out, and you never know what's going to come out of it.
Absolutely, yeah. In a strange way, it has been a star-making system, just not quite in the way anyone thought it was going to be. It's like it's not
Right.
rocketed many winners to superstardom, but it's turned up some interesting people.
Hmm.
Yeah, while we talk about Justin, we haven't talked about his friend group, which I assume is because it's too excruciating.
Yeah, the one friend is, you know, the horn dog party guy. So the three of them are part of something called, I wrote it down, it's BR&J parties, and they're the party kings of spring break, and they're known for throwing the wildest, you know, whipped cream bikini contests and all this stuff, and they've always got a scheme going. So he's got the one friend who's, you know, he's sort of the ringleader, and he's really pushing hard this sort of, you know, huckster, you know, keep the party going kind of, hits on every girl he sees, especially the cop, the sexy cop
Yes.
lady. And then his other friend is a very kind of a, you know, straight-laced nerd type of character who's met his girlfriend, who he spends the whole movie looking for. He met her online in a Xena chat room. uh, he says at one point, and he gets sunburned and has all sorts of mishaps. He gets beat up by a boyfriend of one of the guys that or the girl that the party guy friend is hooking up with. And I think, like, to your point you said earlier, I think those friends are set up to kind of place Justin in the middle. You know,
Completely.
he's
Yeah.
a fun party guy, but he's not that wild, and but he's not quite as much of a, you know, a nerd as this other kid. So he's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think maybe if they had developed Anika Noni Rose's character so we actually got to see her be smart rather than just have one instance where we're told it,
Hmm.
you could say that they were doing the same thing with Kelly. But yeah, with Justin, the positioning is staggeringly obvious. But it is just so funny to me that when they are looking for ways to make it clear that this poor kid is just an irredeemable nerd, an absolute social misfit, the last person you should take to spring break, the thing they land on is he met a girl on the internet.
Yep. Again, yeah, 2003.
Yes. How much more 2003 can it possibly get? You watch it and you think, this is when Facebook was launched. It's in some
Mhm.
ways it's not that distant, but then you watch something like this and you think, no, it's a billion years ago, isn't it?
Yeah. So much of the subterfuge that we spoke about, like for Alexa is trying to intercept messages, that she gets into the text message game with them,
Mm.
and they don't have smartphones yet. They're flip phones. You're using old text speak where you drop all the vowels out of it. My uncle still texts like that, you know. So, but it's pretty funny to see it like that. I feel like that's the kind of thing where you show that to a young audience now, just the appearance of the phones will make them laugh.
Completely. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, it's a circle of life. I remember when I was younger, watching movies and TV shows made in the 80s and just howling at the ridiculous bricks that they had as mobile phones. And
Mhm.
now I'm the old guy sat there going, why are you laughing at that phone? You can play Snake on that. What do you mean you
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what Snake is?
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, it's there's a I don't know if it's a better place to mention this, but there's a scene where the party guy friend gets into a hot tub with his cargo shorts on, and my immediate thought was like, your phone, look how your your keys and your phone and your wallet, like how are you going in there? But like he probably didn't have his phone in there, or if it did, it was so small it was in his top pocket, he didn't have to worry about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess mobile phones never went through that stage that other technology goes through, where they're a very sort of nerdy, embarrassing geek thing early on. They were always kind of high achiever stuff when they were launched, I think.
Sure, yeah, it was a status symbol to begin with, I
Yeah.
would say.
Uh, when they're introduced, like, I don't know whether this is me, because my ear for different American accents is extremely British. Like, if I'm really on form, I can just about tell if someone is actually from Canada. That's the level
Mhm.
that I'm operating at. But they walk on and they've flown into Miami from Pennsylvania. Kelly's character, they're from Texas, right? They're Texans.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. That's fairly explicit, but there's no mention, I think, of where Justin and his friends come from, apart from one brief moment where the horn dog friend says, and this whipped cream bikini party is going to be judged by, guess who? The Pennsylvania posse. And it's only
Hmm.
later on that I realized, oh, that's them. They're from Pennsylvania. I spent like about 40 minutes thinking, who was the, am I meant to know who they were? Were they like a hip hop group back then? Is there going to be a Joe Biden cameo? That's what I was hoping for.
If only. Yeah. Yeah, that would have been something. Yeah, no, they again, it's the I don't think that their geographical origins are really that crucial. I think it's
Mm,
just they're not from Florida and they're on spring break. I definitely think that the Texas setting for or where Kelly's from was strategic because
yeah.
I mean I think she was originally from Texas, but she definitely has that heartland. It wouldn't really work if she was from Los Angeles or something like that. She has to sell that aw shucks, nice girl, just unassuming sort of and I think that Texas sells that a little better than some other places.
She is, as the song goes, just a small town girl. Yes, it's true. Yeah, and that's actually that has sort of put an extra piece in the puzzle of why Kelly Clarkson's career continues to this day and Justin Guarani's doesn't, because you can see as early as this movie that she is very easy to define and he isn't so much. It's like you look at Justin Guarani and you think, well, okay, he's a pop singer, but he doesn't look like a pop singer. He's not sexy. He's not ugly, but he's not sexy. And he doesn't have an obvious link to R&B or country or some other genre that you could use as a kind of a base of operations while you plot out a pop career. Even by the end of an 80-minute film, you're still thinking, I don't know, who is this guy? He seems nice enough, but who is he?
Yeah, no, I can see that. And as much as the script tries to surround him with characters to tell him what he's not, or
Mm,
but you don't get much insight to him. I think as a performer he comes off as I from what I could find out about him, I think he was a stage performer. Like he came up as more of a a musical theater
oh,
type
right.
of
Yeah.
kid. And so I think that you're kind of in that way, you're like kind of sublimating your personality to your role. You're not necessarily selling
Mm,
yourself as the star, whereas I think Kelly had kind of that same background, but she had been doing some like TV and film work prior to being on Idol or around the same time. So I think she had kind of figured that out a little more, or maybe it
Yeah.
was just she had better handlers. You know, I don't know.
It could be, yeah. I think that the one surprise that I got out of Justin's character is that he knows how to beatbox, which I thought was a genuine shock moment.
Right. In his rapping friend.
Yes.
Yeah, he has several. That guy has several rap scenes, and if you look him up, he's primarily like a visual artist. He's done like visual art and kind of like abstract expressionist, really far away from his character. You wouldn't
Yeah.
believe it.
I wonder if
But
any of them involve whipped cream bikinis, whether that's part of his performance oeuvre.
I'm sure someone has requested it. You know.
But yeah, I don't know. I wondered if that that sort of beatboxing and rapping scene is obviously meant to be a kind of cringe comedy moment, and the girls who are watching them react with absolute disdain. It is quite weird to think that by 2003, you know, there's another gangly, curly-haired, white dork who came up through manufactured pop, who's actually doing pretty well with hip hop and R&B based music, which is of course Justin Timberlake, whose existence, as much as I don't like Justin Timberlake at all, that just feels like the future compared to how impossibly square the pop in this film is. You can see that as being, you can sort of understand why people glommed onto those early Justin Timberlake records in a way that I always struggle to when they were actually current, because if this is the competition, yeah, fine, I get it.
Yeah. The other Justin, I mean, I would say all around is more of has a more of a persona as a performer. You know, as an actor, he was willing to take risks and do kind of you know, poke fun at himself, you know, which kind of makes you bulletproof in one sense, you know.
Yeah.
But he was also, yeah, he was pretty versatile too. He could do pop, he could do more R&B, like dance tracks, you know. I don't really know what Justin's career, or Justin Guarini, however you say his name. Unfortunately, I don't know how to say it.
I mean, that is the kind of symbol of how badly this went for him, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think nowadays he's pretty much doing regional theater, and you can hire him to speak at your corporate event. If you go to his website, he's got some great, some great packages available.
I mean, I can sort of see him being a good musical theatre actor, because I think the things about him that are liabilities as a pop star, the fact that he has very little personality and he seems kind of earnest, are things that, you know, great musical theatre careers have been built on in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And he's done a lot of that work. I think he's only made a couple of actual albums, but if you look at like what he's been doing, he's done a lot of stage work, and yeah, it makes sense. I mean, he's still getting his name out there and people remember who he is.
I think that he could possibly do better with comedy that has a slightly better script than this. I mean, you can tell exactly what kind of movie it is because there is a bit where Justin falls out of a window, and there is a very obviously post-dubbed, oh, that's going to leave a mark on the soundtrack. Yeah,
Yep.
that is the marker of a certain kind of comedy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, the humor in this is it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. I can't lie.
It reminded me of when there's that bit where the dorky kid, who I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, but when he's sort of going to get a suntan, he says he's going to go off and get a suntan, and of course the joke is that he gets sunburned, but in between there's this very odd little shot where he just rubs suntan lotion over himself and just goes, and sinks back onto the beach and spreads his arm out. And it reminds me of those kind of children's sitcoms where they're dealing with an audience who don't quite know how the world works yet. So if someone says, all right, I'm going to go to the drive-through, you have to show them getting in the car, going out, getting a burger, eating it, going, that's a tasty burger, because you can't assume the audience knows this stuff yet.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect summation of a lot of the storytelling in this movie. Yeah.
And it's odd because it's not exactly a children's movie, isn't it? It feels it's on that weird edge. This is slightly before people started saying tweens all the time, I think. But it feels kind of like that. It's like the stabilizer wheels for your for a proper teen movie. If you're not quite old enough to watch She's All That, or Get Over It, or What You're Gonna Do, or That's Gonna Leave a Mark, or any of the other films that I've just made up, you can watch this and it'll ease you into it. I think that's kind of what they're going for.
It's gotta be. You know, we talked about how anachronistic it feels. It feels like the kind of story that would have happened for a previous generation, for not even necessarily for pop stars you're putting into a template, but like just that kind of teen romance. There's, you know, it's very chaste and wholesome. You know, one of the, you know, we mentioned that the whipped cream bikini contest, you know, there's no nudity. There's another contest where some couples go into the water to change clothes with each other. No nudity. Like when I think of the 80s teen comedies, all of that would have predicated, you know,
yes,
just copious amounts of unnecessary nudity. This is the kind of movie that says, well, that nudity is unnecessary. You know, why would we, you know, and again, you know, they I think they were going for that PG rating. They were playing off of that populist, you know, they got popular from this TV show. There were a lot of kids watching it with their families. I think they were kind of consciously making it that way, you know. So even Alexa with her, you know, boy crazy kind of attitude really doesn't go that far in it. It's more talk and, oh, look at that boy, more than, you know, actually acting upon it very much, you know.
Yeah, because it's like there is one other thing that is obviously absent in this film, other than, as you say, any sort of real sexuality. That's that there's very little drinking in it. There's lots of talk about Alexa dancing on the table, but we are to assume that she just does this because she's a fun-loving gal, you know.
Right. Yeah. No, there's never. Yeah. None of the party stuff really has a lot of drinking. There's no keg stands, you know, which again, I don't know if people were actually doing by 2003, you know, but it's the kind of thing. Again,
they probably were, right? Yeah.
Probably. I mean, like when I hear what kids are doing now, I'm like, yeah, okay, great. You know, it's a lot. They have their own rituals and things, but there's always a debauchery to it. You know, the whole point of spring break is to get away from your parents and go wild, and, you know, people hook up and all of that. And it's there. This is not that, you know, people are going there to party and then go back to their hotel with their, you know, at a reasonable hour.
Yeah.
In this movie, you know.
I did wonder, with its cast of teenage pop stars and its spring break plotline, is this what Harmony Korine was inspired by when he made Spring Breakers?
Oh, undoubtedly. It was, you know, pretty much the same movie.
Yes. So there is one sort of minor note about this film's release that I found fascinating. It didn't earn much money at the box office when it came out, but it nearly earned even less because some cinema chains threatened not to show it because Fox wanted to shorten the release window to just 6 weeks until it came out on DVD, and, well, it would be VHS back then. Yeah, they still have VHS. So this is an unexpected streaming pioneer, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely put the fire under them. Well, I think what happened was that they were going to release it on DVD sooner than the theaters like. Is that how it worked? It was
Yeah,
there was the
yeah.
contention was that they okay. Because then I think what happened was that because it didn't make any money, they said, well, screw it, and just put it on DVD 6 weeks later anyway, to recoup their losses a little bit. But yeah, no, it's definitely a precursor to those conversations we were having a year or two ago.
Mm, yes. Yeah, that's a very odd, an odd historical pioneer there, I think.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that really threw me, and I cannot figure out. Maybe this is in the director's cut, which I didn't know existed until you mentioned it. So that's it. I know what I'm watching tonight, listeners. Um, but when the nerdy kid's internet date finally turns up, she looks significantly older than the rest of the cast. And I don't know whether that's meant to be part of the gag of, is it just because, but apart from Justin Guarini and Kelly Clarkson, everyone in this is about 10 years older than the characters they're playing. Is it just that there's like one person who was lit, unfortunately, and looks her age? I don't know.
I think that could be it. I didn't get the sense that her character was supposed to be significantly older. Yeah, but
I think if a teen comedy in the 2000s, even one this tame, was going for an age gap joke, they would make it kind of grotesque because that was just the style of the humor back then. You'd get Cloris Leachman in for a cameo or something.
Yeah, no, that's true. And in fact, you mentioning that scene and the other cut on the DVD, they have deleted scenes on there, and there's an alternate version of the scene where he meets his girlfriend. So if you remember, just prior to that, he's talking with the jock guy who had busted into his room earlier and accused him of sleeping with his girlfriend, and they kind of have this jokey male bonding relationship where the nerd is kind of talking the jock through exploring his feelings and meeting her emotional needs and that sort of thing. And so in the alternate version of that scene, the jock tells the nerd friend that he's found his perfect partner, and now because they split up, they're going to go their separate ways. And his perfect partner is revealed to be a man. And a guy comes from off screen and they hug, and the nerd just kind of gives him a kind of a look, and they go off. And that was the alternate version of that scene that wasn't used. Which is fascinating.
Yeah, that sounds like it was actually weirdly tastefully handled for this stage. It
is. It's not. There's no homophobia in the scene at all. The way it plays out, it just turns out, well, I figured it out. I'm good. I think that if that scene was in the movie, this movie would have had a way different feel by the end of it. It would have felt at least somewhat inclusive, where we've noted before, like anybody who's not kind of conforming to that white hetero gets their own story over here, and so yeah, I found that really interesting, and I kind of wish that was in the movie instead.
Yeah, that is fascinating. My main memory of representation around this age was that it was so thin that we were having to champion an Oliver Stone movie about Alexander the Great, which is who would you rather go to for gay representation, Kelly Clarkson or Oliver Stone? I think I know where I'd put my cross these days, but
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that is a genuine bombshell. I'm tempted to end on it, but I will ask if you've got any other final thoughts beyond From Justin to Kelly, Gay Rights Pioneer.
Other than that, really just, you know, the cover of Vacation by the Go-Go's in here is terrible.
Oh man,
just mention that.
yeah, isn't it just?
Oof.
And it comes in at the worst point where it's over the opening credits of them going to Miami, and you think, is every musical number in this going to be Say What You See? Because I'm not sure I can deal with that.
Yeah, it's a hell of a way to open up. But yeah, that's I'm glad that didn't become its own hit.
Yes. Well, listeners, if you've enjoyed today's episode, there's a whole archive of Pop Screen to listen to, including Jeffrey's previous appearance on the show covering Cool as Ice, which was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was.
You can also get exclusive episodes if you donate to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Geek Show. But until next week, I've been your host, Graham.
And I've been Jeff.
And we'll see you next week.